horrible things that have been said to her. But it's kind of interesting how my way of thinking is and how a lot of other people's way of thinking is. Like, if I see something that's particularly offensive, I don't really get into it that much, because if I see something that's, even if it's directed at me, it doesn't really bother me. If I had like a ton of people saying that I was a bad person or whatever and tweeting racist things at me, I don't know if you could do that, but tweeting racist things at me, it wouldn't really get to me. Not many things do. And it's kind of surprising to me that Leslie Jones, who's a comedian, lets these things get to her, because she's a comedian and comedians are usually used to having tons of stuff being thrown at them, but she's not for some reason.
Companies and businesses that help keep us safe. Identity theft is a huge problem. Several large national retail chains are closing their doors, working to sell off as much merchandise as possible. It's not just merchandise they're selling. The value of data has reached an all-time high. Selling personal information has become a lucrative business. Are you safe? Do you want somebody like LifeLock in your corner? You need to have them like I do. It's a peace of mind that it's hard to describe, because with identity theft being such a pervasive problem, if an identity thief steals your social security number, your identity, LifeLock is there to work to fix it. A U.S.-based agent will work to fix the problem. They'll send you an alert. They'll work with you. That's a lot different than the free credit monitoring services that are out there, which only alert you to changes in credit. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions at all businesses, but LifeLock is the best identity theft protection available. Membership starts as low as $9.99 a month, plus applicable taxes. Just go to LifeLock.com or call 800-918-9450. Use the promo code Gallagher. That's Gallagher because I want you to get 10% off your LifeLock Ultimate Plus membership. Call 800-918-9450, 800-918-9450, or go to LifeLock.com for LifeLock.
I guess I've been banned from radio too for saying the offensive things that I've been saying, but that's how she goes. Actually, there's next to zero chance of me ever getting off the air because, you see, I'm in good with the owners, so there's no way that I'll be kicked off. Fortunately, I can say whatever the heck I want. But you've been seeing what's happening at the Republican National Convention. It's been getting kind of crazy. There were allegations yesterday and the day before that bikers for Trump were possibly causing a lot of trouble. They were coming in and wrecking things and being a nuisance and all that sort of thing. And we haven't seen any evidence of that from our correspondent on the ground. We had Sam on the air 2 days ago. He was talking about what was happening at the Republican National Convention, and really not much was to be said about any sort of ruckus. It's interesting politically, and it's interesting in a lot of other ways, but it's not really a chaotic scene like media has really been wanting to push for some odd reason, because we keep seeing things about how Black Lives Matter is making things hard for people at the Republican National Convention. And you see things about, bikers for Trump have come in and made things a mess. And really that's not logistically possible because A, there's such a huge crowd. I don't know how they get attention in the first place. And B, there are no motor vehicles allowed within a 1 mile radius of the convention center where they're holding the Republican National Convention. So it's highly unlikely that there's any form of biking around in the area of the convention center. I think it's the Circuit City Convention Center, something along those lines. No, it's the not Circuit City. They've been out of business for a while. Well, you know what I'm talking about, the convention center down there. There's next to no way there'd ever be a motorcyclist down there causing problems. And if Black Lives Matter started causing a scene, probably the police would ask them to leave, because it's a de facto sort of police state within that area, within that controlled 1 mile radius. That's just how it is. That's how it always is at national conventions, both the Republican and the Democratic national conventions. Because keep in mind, something about the Republican National Convention you got to remember. It's not just important people who are there in terms of, they're in the party. It's important people who are there in terms of they are senators and congressmen. They're in the Congress, they're in the House of Representatives, and they're in the Senate. So it's not just important people, it's people who are protected by Secret Service who are there. And the Secret Service doesn't mess around when it comes to security. There's no way that they would allow any sort of trouble around anyone who's a representative or a senator. There's just no way that they would let that happen. So it's highly unlikely that any sort of massive event will happen within that zone. It's just not likely at all. Well, anyway, we've heard about Twitter banning people. We've also heard a little bit about what's happening with the banking system. It's not really a problem with this banking system so much as it is a problem with people getting, a virus on their computer, which is then draining their bank accounts. Criminals are planting banking malware where victims would least expect it. Now, here's the thing about the modern banking system. There are a lot of problems with it. There's a lot wrong with the modern banking system in terms of the technical aspects of it, in terms of how a lot of the security is a little bit outdated. But the biggest problem with the modern banking system is the human problem, which is to say people are using the banking system and people are not very good at security at all. Just in our nature, we are way too trusting. Computers will take input and output and they don't care who it comes from. But people are way too trusting because we'll trust other people and we'll mention things we shouldn't mention around other people, or we'll respond to emails that we shouldn't respond to. For instance, if you get an email that says, hey, we found out that you were supposed to be at, jury duty. You missed jury duty, and now you have to pay us on PayPal. It doesn't work that way. County governments would never ask you to pay via PayPal. It's just not an option for them. It's always check, credit card, cash, whatever. Usually they want cash or check, but they would never ask you to pay for anything over PayPal, right? Like if I go to Georgia, where I live at the county courthouse, and I ask for a concealed carry weapons permit and I pass a background check, I'm not going to be able to pay through PayPal. That's just not how it works. Never in any universe has that ever been how it's worked. So don't ever fall for that. And I know I can't expect people to know that sort of thing because I'm more of an enthusiast than some people are. I've been on computers all my life. It's just something that is ingrained into me, like it's burned into me. You don't give out your personal information over email. It's just something you don't do. And you learn that through experience. You have your RuneScape account stolen, that sort of thing. It's just you don't give out your information over the internet. It's just not something that's done. But a lot of people, especially in the older generation, and it's not their fault, but people in the older generation, a lot of them, not all of them, are just not aware of that because they tend to be trusting because we're used to a system where you could trust people and you really can't anymore. Well, there's malware where you might least expect it. According to Ars Technica, a criminal gang recently found an effective way to spread malware that drains online bank accounts. According to a blog post published on Monday, they bundled the malicious executable inside a file that installed a legitimate administrative tool available to download. The legitimate tool is known as AMY Admin, that's AMMYY Admin, and is used to provide remote access to a computer so someone can work on it even when they don't actually have physical access to it. It's like TeamViewer, it's like TightVNC, it's something that's used a lot. Well, according to Monday's blog post, members of a criminal enterprise known as Lurk somehow managed to tamper with the AMY installer so that it surreptitiously installed a malicious spyware program in addition to the legitimate admin tool that people were expecting. To increase their chances of success, the criminals modified the PHP script running on the AMY web server, suggesting that they had control over the website as well. So there's a lot going on here, and it's quite complicated, but this is one of those ways where your bank account information could be stolen without you ever even knowing it. One thing that we had, I think it was in Bradley and Hamilton counties not too long ago here in the Tennessee Valley, in the Chattanooga and Cleveland areas, is there were what they were calling skimmers or skimming devices on different card readers just all over the place in different gas stations mostly. And I've seen them on ATMs as well. I should say I've seen other people see them on ATMs as well, just photos on Facebook and stuff. And what they are is, and it's really quite genius, but what it does is it's like a shell that fits over the keypad and the card swiper on the gas station pump. So when you go to swipe your card and you put in your PIN code for your debit card, it knows and it logs that information. So then they can easily make a clone of that card with the same magnetic strip data that your card has and the same PIN, because it monitors what PIN number you've put in. They monitor that information, and then they can go and use your card or a clone of your card, and the bank can't tell the difference, especially if you're in the same area as the person whose card you stole. It's easy. It's ridiculously easy. The only risk involved is putting that skimming device on the ATM or on the gas station pump or wherever else you put it. That's the only risk involved, is putting it there and retrieving it. And sometimes you don't even have to worry about retrieving it. You just stick it there and you get the information off of it wirelessly, and it feeds it power through a battery pack. the same sort of battery pack that you would use to charge your phone. So it's very complicated stuff, and it's an easy way to steal people's identity, or at least their banking credentials. So how do you get around that? You say, well, if it's on there, how do I get around it? Well, this is inconvenient, but security is often inconvenient. The best way to get around that is actually just to shop with cash more often than not. When you go to buy gas, you do cash, or you can use your credit card as well, and just make sure that you don't put your PIN code in. If you run it as credit, that could work too. But the best option would be, of course, to just go inside and pay with cash, or go inside and pay with your debit card like you normally would, and just hope that there's not a skimmer actually inside the building, in which case an employee would have had to have installed it there, in which case that's a whole nother problem for a whole nother day. But these skimming devices are a real legitimate problem, and they've been causing problems for people for years and years. I think the first time I heard about a skimming device on at gas stations especially was probably 6 or 7 years ago. And at the time, it was just reading the RFID chips on people's cards. You know how at some of the new cash registers, they've got the thing where you can just tap your card on it and it'll pay. Well, you know how you can use Google Pay to do that too, where you tap your phone on the card reader and you've paid. It's a similar idea to that, except you're putting the skimming device that reads RFID signals from their cards and from their phones, and you're just putting it in a brown paper bag on top of the gas station pump. And it just reads that information because it's got a much bigger, more amplified antenna, and it just picks these things up. And it was easy to steal people's credit card information that way. You didn't even have to bother with the PIN code because it would just tap to pay. So it was ridiculously easy. And I think they found a way around that now with the chip and PIN system, but still, it was ridiculously easy. And by the way, here in Chattanooga, I've noticed it more here than anywhere else. People are getting issued chip cards where you have to actually stick it in the machine and leave it there while you punch in your PIN card or your PIN code. I've noticed people keep wanting to swipe their cards that have the chip on them. And don't worry, I do it too all the time. But it takes a while to get used to that new technology. So, and it's not really new. Actually, it's been around since the 80s or 90s in Europe, but still. So getting used to this is going to be a long process. It's going to take a while for us to get used to it because we're actually kind of behind in America with a lot of technologies, surprisingly. You would actually be surprised how many technologies we're behind on in America. Now, the U.S. tends to be on the forefront of next to every technological movement ever, right? Like we were on the forefront of DVD. We were on the forefront of VHS technology. We were pioneering digital audio and digital video. Like we're used to the United States being on top of everything. Things are kind of shifting around, though, mostly because of what's called consumer adoption, where buyers just don't want to buy things. It's kind of hard to explain, where the next best thing and the next best, safest thing isn't necessarily what the consumer wants. So how do you get them to get that? Think about this. A 4K TV is now about as affordable as a higher end HD TV, right? 1080p TV. You can buy a 4K TV that's about $500, which is about what most people paid for their brand new HD TVs 5 to 6 years ago. But people don't want to make that upgrade because we don't want to drop another $500 on something that a lot of people see as a useless upgrade because there's next to no content for it yet. It doesn't really look that much markedly better than an HD TV anyway, right? Like people have that mindset. So it's hard to get people to buy the next best thing. It took forever for Blu-ray to catch on because you had to get people to buy the TV and then buy the Blu-ray reader and or player. And for most people, their first Blu-ray player was a PlayStation 3. It was a lot of my friends' first Blu-ray player was their PlayStation 3, just like a lot of people's first DVD player was their PlayStation 2. We didn't buy it because it played Blu-rays or because it played DVDs. It had that added functionality of playing games, right? Like we want games, but we're not necessarily okay with buying something that's strictly for watching movies just because they look better. So the same sort of mentality applies with our banking system too. Yeah, we have a high-tech banking system. Yes, it's almost completely online. And yes, most of the numbers are just that, numbers. But it's hard to get people to adopt anything new. Even if we perceive it to be miles better, it's just hard to get people to adopt anything new because it's a new routine to memorize. Like most of us will swipe our cards without even thinking about it. It's just a motion that we've memorized. It's almost muscle memory to us. You see an item, we swipe our card. We're just used to it now. But things have gotten a lot harder. It's not a lot harder. Things have gotten a lot different, where now you have to insert the card and wait, and then you put in the PIN code, and when it tells you to take out your card, you take out your card from the slot. It's a weird process, and it's a lot different from what we're used to. It's not harder, it's not easier, it's just different. So getting the consumer to get into that motion, to get into that groove of doing that is not particularly easy. Surprisingly enough, it's not easy to get people to do new things when they don't perceive it as being more convenient. I think convenience is probably the biggest reason for adoption of anything. Convenience is at the forefront of anyone's reason for doing anything. Like, we will drive a particular route to get home because it's more convenient to drive that way. There are fewer left-hand turns, even though the one with more left-hand turns might technically be faster. It's not as convenient, right? Like, we will a lot of the time do things that are more convenient but aren't necessarily better, right? Like, we use the same password for everything. That's not better, but it's more convenient to use the same password for everything. I've got about 5 or 6 passwords that I circulate through. I've got a lot of them, and it's hard for me to remember which one goes to what half the time, and it's just inconvenient. But it makes me a little bit more secure, so if one password gets stolen, at least not everything is compromised. Or if the password for, say, my World of Warcraft account gets stolen, just as an example, my bank account isn't gone too. It's that sort of thing. Or PayPal and bank account are different passwords. Online games are mostly all the same password, but other things are not. It's a whole big thing. There's a whole big philosophy behind it. And it's hard to get people to adopt that because it's not convenient at all. It's almost the opposite of convenient. Being safe, being really free is really, really inconvenient. And that's why it's hard to get people to adopt it. I personally don't want to, in my convenient side of mine, don't want to go to a hard metal currency, right? Because that's entirely inconvenient, but it might actually be better. So we got to maybe get people out of that rut of thinking, well, this is more convenient, and so I'm going to do it, even if it's not necessarily the best thing. It's kind of a weird psychological thing. We're going to talk more about the Republican National Convention and how there might actually be a superbug or a norovirus at the Republican National Convention right now. Hopefully our reporter on the ground doesn't have it. Talk to him in a little bit here on Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. They're soaring worldwide. Prices for gold and silver are soaring worldwide. Rick Davis wants you to take advantage of them. Go to Rick Davis right now. Rick Davis Gold and Silver and get yours today. Your cash, and more cash. Go ahead, take advantage of them. Gold is soaring past $1,350 an ounce. That's 1,350 an ounce. Silver is out of this world too. Buy and sell at Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. Gold, silver, jewelry, rings, watches. Rick Davis has got what you want. Right on. Cash, and more cash. Rick Davis has got so much cash it's as tall as a billboard. And he wants to stuff it in your pocket. Cash, and more cash. Yours for the asking. Come on in today and watch metals rise up as high as Rick's billboard. Rick Davis Gold and Diamond, 5301 Brainerd Road. You know where it is. Come get your cash, and more cash.
Rubber's tough, but foam rubber is soft. Foam rubber is the star at Stuff It Upholstery, which uses it to revive your couch, your embarrassing easy chair, your boat seat cushions. Stuff It Foam Rubber in Hickson covers Chattanooga and surrounding areas. Don't throw out that favorite easy chair that's grown haggard and barbaric. New life for your seat cushions. Premium auto-grade rubber foam for your restaurant, church, or business. Stuff It Upholstery brings comfort and relief. Go ahead, skid away from flat, dull, and droopy cushions. Relax, restore, revive. When comfort matters, Stuff It. 4608 Hickson Pike, 877-1616. Ask for Larry. That's 877-1616.
On your signature, you can get $150,000. Can you believe that? $150,000 on your signature. Hi, I'm Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. There's a program right now that you can get $150,000 on your signature with no pledge of collateral or personal guarantee. Call me at 423-875-5621 to learn more. 423-875-5621. You've been thinking about starting a business? Don't do it on your own. I have a proven track record for the last 13 years, a 96% success rate. I can guide you into a franchise where you will pay your yourself through the startup phase with very low or little risk. Call me now. I'm Bruce Krebs at 423-875-5621. And make sure to listen to the Entrepreneur Hour every other Wednesday from 11 to 12 o'clock. Call me now, 875-5621.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. Well, it's a normal day at work, and then suddenly a car crashes through your front door. That's what happened at a Jasper gas station, the BP on Main Street. Police say the driver of the car told police that the gas pedal got stuck. She couldn't stop. She went through the front of the store. Everyone inside was fine. No word on any charges being pressed, and the damage is going to take a while to repair. After the SWAT standoff at the Bradley County Animal Clinic, the family of the suspect is now questioning police tactics. Family members claim that they were not allowed to negotiate with their family member who had holed himself up inside the Bradley County Animal Clinic. However, Sheriff Eric Watson defending his actions, saying that he was going to kill someone, kill himself, and if we was to come in, he was going to shoot us, said Bradley County Sheriff Eric Watson. The Appalachian Animal Clinic in Bradley County is going to be closed for a few days for cleanup and for emotional repair. How many Tennesseans are without broadband access? Survey says 13%, according to the Department of Economic and Community Development. 13% of Tennesseans without broadband access. It's going on in the Tennessee Valley. It's going on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Expect partly cloudy, very hot and humid weather out there through the afternoon. Mainly dry for a while, highs mid and upper 90s. Tonight, muggy lows 72 to 75. For Thursday and Friday, the heat wave continues. Just a slight chance of a stray afternoon storm with highs into the upper 90s. For lunch or dinner, come to Guthrie's, home of the original golden fried delicious chicken finger with their special world-famous sauce. Open daily, locations in Trenton, Signal Mountain, and Ringgold. Go get Guthrie's. It's always good. And I'm 1412 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
If you remember way back when, this is a long time ago, so don't worry if you don't remember. But we had a long time ago a show on the air called Cowboy Up with Tex, and he was great. He was amazing. He unfortunately, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but he actually moved out to California. He was really tough on immigration, though, and he was great about that. Really tough on immigration. I don't think I saw the light on it at the time. I've sort of over time become tougher on immigration myself, but back then I was sort of a idealistic sort of libertarian at the time, and I still consider myself pretty libertarian, but I've tightened up on immigration a little bit as time has gone by. Not entirely. I'm not extreme. But I sort of get why we might want to have some controls. But at the time, he was talking about immigration and very good talks he would give. Even if I didn't necessarily agree with him, he was very well spoken and he put his point out there really well. He was not your typical Republican because he wasn't really your typical Republican. He was very well spoken. He did his show in a great way, and it's a shame that he's not here anymore. But you know, you can always watch his shows back on YouTube as well. If you go to YouTube and search for Cowboy Up with Tex, he's right there on our Facebook, not Facebook, but our YouTube channel, so you can watch him there and watch our classic shows. He did a good show, though, definitely worth watching. But one thing that he touched upon that is sort of coming back to haunt me is the norovirus. Now, it's N-O-R-O virus, the norovirus. Now, when I first heard about it, we were talking about it in the context that immigrants who are coming over the border from Mexico may have had norovirus. Now, I haven't read the papers about norovirus. I'm not sure of its exact effects, and I've not seen any paper that definitively said, yes, immigrants from Mexico had norovirus and brought it over. But the allegation was that immigrants from Mexico were bringing norovirus over the border into the country, which is a major health concern because Mexico it's a legitimate country. It's a place that is not horrible to visit. It's not like Mexico is it's not like Venezuela. We'll put it that way, right? Like Mexico has structure. It has public rail and bus systems and all that sort of thing. It's not like hell on earth or anything. And I don't want to offend any Mexican people who may be listening. Although if you're a Mexican person listening and you're here now, chances are you're not the biggest fan of Mexico as it is now. But you know what I'm talking about. So it's not like Mexico is the worst place in the world when it comes to hygiene. But for some odd reason, this norovirus seemed to have been popping up and coming over the border. And I'm not exactly sure why that was happening, but maybe the people who had it were coming over to get healthcare from California, which is notorious for its, free healthcare system that is really a drain on the taxpayer and yada, yada. But now it's coming back to haunt me at the Republican National Convention. This is binary here on Hot News Talk Radio. I am not at the Republican National Convention. However, we have a correspondent on the ground at the Republican National Convention who are hoping to get on the air a little bit later, Sam Jordan on the ground at the RNC in Cleveland, Ohio. I've actually been to Cleveland, believe it or not. This Southern boy's been around. I've been to Cleveland, Ohio. I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame back in 2008, just before the Democratic National Convention happened, actually, which was not in Cleveland at the time, but I remember that was in the news at the time. I was a little bit younger back then, obviously. And I'm also familiar with Erie, Pennsylvania, because my aunt lives in Erie, Pennsylvania. Believe it or not, right on Lake Erie. That's why it's called Erie, Pennsylvania. But yeah, I'm very familiar with that area. But around 11 California Republican Party staff members who arrived in Cleveland early to help organize this week's national convention have fallen ill with what appears to be the norovirus. Now, is there a connection now between the whole Cleveland thing and the California Republican delegate thing and the whole illegal immigrant thing? Is that a correlation? Possibly. Health officials have reportedly taken fecal samples, you know what that is, from the sick and sent them for testing at a lab in Columbus, Ohio. They say it looks to be the norovirus, but we're not going to say that it definitely is, says Erie County Health Commissioner Pete Schad to the local newspaper, the Plain Dealer, which is actually a pretty cool name for a newspaper. The staffers who have fallen ill are essentially being quarantined at their hotel, the Kalahari Resort in Sandusky, Ohio. The facility is about 60 miles away from the Cleveland Arena where the convention is taking place. Now, I will say, I hate being sick, but I'll also say that having to be quarantined at the Kalahari Hotel and Resort is probably not the worst fate that could befall someone. Like if I went to be a journalist, say, at the Republican National Convention, I'd be pretty bummed if I didn't actually get to go to the Republican National Convention and I came down with like the flu or something. But if they said, look, you're going to be quarantined at the Kalahari Resort, I'd probably be okay with that, actually, because I'd be like, oh, well, my life is a living hell. Now I'm at this luxury resort and hotel with all expenses paid. Oh, well. Oh, also I happen to have the flu. It wouldn't be a big deal to me. I'd actually be kind of okay with it. But so far, no delegates have been infected, but local health authorities are cautioning convention attendees to wash their hands frequently, which everyone should do anyway, avoid sharing food, which everyone should do anyway, and avoid shaking hands. Now, this is the Republican National Convention, right? These guys shake hands so much they could start a fire, right? There's so much friction going on, they could start many fires. There's so much handshaking going on that it's starting to show up on the Richter scale. There's a lot of handshaking going on, so that one's not going to be avoided. The resort has set up hand sanitizer stations for guests. However, alcohol-based sanitizers are not effective against non-enveloped viruses, such as the norovirus. So I was not aware of that, believe it or not. Alcohol-based hand sanitizers are actually not effective against a lot of things. Alcohol, as you know, kills a lot of things, cells, brain cells. That's why we drink it so much. But it's also good at killing a lot of viruses, and you don't have to, boil your hands to clean them. You can just use alcohol-based hand sanitizer to cleanse your hands that way, but it doesn't get everything. So if there's a scare of, say, a norovirus going around and you use alcohol-based hand sanitizer, it actually might not kill it. I've heard before that bleach is pretty good at killing things. Definitely it's great at killing people, but I wouldn't want to dip my hands in concentrated bleach just because my hands are white enough and I don't need them to be even whiter. The notorious gastrointestinal bug known to lurk on cruise ships, schools, daycare centers, and recently several Chipotle restaurants causes sudden and explosive bouts of vomiting and explosive bouts of stuff from the other direction. The virus is highly contagious and can spread directly or indirectly from a sick person from shaking hands, touching shared services, or through shared food items. So basically, if it's in the area, there's no escaping it. So could it be that the norovirus will be infecting more people at the Republican National Convention? There's not really any way to say. I don't know. But still, it's something to be aware of, because if you read later on, Republican National Convention hit with horrible bout of norovirus, millions sent to the hospital, well, hundreds sent to the hospital, you'll know why. Something that I want to bring up too, by the way, is not particularly tech related, but it is Republican National Convention related, and I'm the only local person on the air at the moment talking about it. The Republican National Convention is something that's really interesting to me for a lot of different reasons. For one, it is very technologically advanced. It's like the Super Bowl of Republican politics. And I say this not as a Republican, because I'm not registered as one. I'm registered, but I'm not registered as a Republican. I'm not exactly sure what I'm registered as, believe it or not. I am registered to vote in the state of Georgia, but I don't know what I'm registered as. I don't think I should have to register as anything. You know, it's not any business of the state what party I go for, honestly. It shouldn't matter to anyone what party I go for, unless you're listening to me on talk radio, in which case you should have some perspective on who I am. That's something that's always interesting to me about Colin Cowherd, by the way. I never know exactly what his stance is, and he always sort of surprises me. He seems a lot more conservative than a lot of talk show hosts, especially on the national level, in sports especially, because I've noticed a lot of sports commentators are pretty dang liberal sometimes. Bob Costas as an example. But he's also not exactly conservative either. He's sort of mysterious on that. And I think he gains his politics more from experience, personal experience, than he does from reading what pundits say. And I have to say, I kind of respect that. I don't agree with him all the time, but I think I could tolerate hanging out with him. And I'm a pretty tolerant kind of guy, I will say. But I feel like I wouldn't get annoyed at talking about politics with Colin Cowherd, and that's really kind of impressive to me. So you should listen to his show every weekday here from 12 to 3 here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. That's Colin Cowherd every weekday. By the way, speaking of sports, it's not just national sports we talk about. We also talk about the local side on Clutch with Keon Rose. He's on from 6 to 7 every weekday, and he and I do a show every week on Thursday from 7 to 8, where we talk about, well, whatever it is millennials talk about, and that's on from 7 to 8 every Thursday here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. Check us out on Facebook. Like us on Facebook, Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 on Facebook. Watch us on YouTube, by the way. We are live on YouTube right now. If you go to YouTube and then search for Hot News Talk Radio, you will see that we are live right now. The name of the title is Milo Band and RNC, because I was in a rush to type out the title. I'll change it later because you can actually do that on YouTube now. So that's Hot News Talk Radio on YouTube. And you can watch the live stream. I'm wearing a khaki shirt that makes me kind of look like Jungle Jack Hanna. I'm not sure why I'm wearing this shirt, actually, because it's way too hot for it, but it's always like 70 degrees in the office. Anyway, so the Republican National Convention interests me for a lot of reasons. And I think the biggest one is because of the technical aspect. But another thing that's been sort of getting under my skin is how everyone is scrutinizing everything everyone says. And I like to play fair with everybody, you know, because I think a big part of tearing apart the opposition, so to speak, is being fair with them too. Because you can not like someone politically, and even not like someone personally, but being unfair with them and giving a false report is just as bad as the other side would do. Right. So, example, if it was the other way around and Michelle Obama had allegedly ripped off Melania's speech, I wouldn't see that as a huge deal. And in this case, Melania has allegedly ripped off Michelle Obama's speech, and I don't really see that as a big deal, because you have to keep in mind, everyone sort of has this pretense that, especially if you're not heavily involved in politics, everyone has the pretense that the president and anyone else writes their own speeches. And really, no one should write their own speeches unless they're me, because I'm good at it. But no one should write their own speeches. If you're a politician, especially, because you might make a grammatical error that someone will make fun of, right? You might say something that's not technically true and you'll get made fun of. You might write something that is a little bit too, self-congratulatory and you'll get made fun of. There's all sorts of reasons why a politician shouldn't write their own speeches, and smart politicians know that. Donald Trump knows that. Obama knows that. I don't agree with his politics, but he is a smart politician. The president is. He's a very good politician. He's just not good politically, you know. So they all know that. Everyone who's a Republican, Democrat, a senator, congressman, governor, mayor, sheriff, doesn't matter. They all know that you shouldn't write your own speeches 100%. So Melania, we all know she didn't really write her own speech, at least not entirely. She wrote parts of it, she says, and her family has said, yeah, she wrote parts of it. And they talked to Donald Trump Jr. He doesn't know exactly how much of it was written by her and how much of it wasn't. And I wouldn't know who wrote my speech either. You know, I would know who wrote it if I was the one speaking it, but I wouldn't know who wrote it if someone else was, even if it was my sister or my mom, my dad. You know, I don't know. So it's the same sort of thing. I don't see it as a big deal that there are allegations now that she plagiarized the speech, because I don't think you can really blame Melania Trump for plagiarizing the speech. There's a whole team behind it, just like there was a whole team behind Michelle Obama's speech, I'm sure. So it's not an issue of, well, look at what Melania did, and well, look at what Michelle Obama did. It's more a question of maybe there are some people who wrote Michelle Obama's speech who wrote Melania's speech. You know, my intern Steve and I were talking about that. It's entirely possible that that could happen. So plagiarism, that's too strong of a word. Maybe some copy pasting. Yeah, it does seem that way. Strong influence. Sure. If you look at them on their base, they're good speeches. Both of them are good speeches. I don't care who you are. Michelle Obama's speech was pretty good. And I don't care who you are. Melania Trump's speech was pretty good. Just objectively, they're good speeches. So it makes sense that they would be similar. And they are kind of standard in what they say. Donald Trump Jr. said that in an interview with David Muir from ABC. Actually, he said, I'll try to be as accurate as I can with what he said. He said there's not really anything novel about Melania Trump's speech, and he's not saying that to put down his mother, his stepmother, but that does seem to be the case. There's not really anything novel about what she said. It's more of a, I'm here, I'm active, I'm reading a speech, and I'm supporting my husband kind of speech. It's standard stuff. It's political stuff. The whole plagiarism thing, I think, is going way overboard. Even if it was, and I hope I'm sincere about this, even if it was someone I didn't like politically, and I'm not Trump's biggest fan, I'll say that outright. Even if it was someone I really didn't like Elizabeth Warren, I'd be fair with her and say, look, she didn't write the speech herself. Her speechwriters wrote her speech. You know, holding her responsible for everything she says in a speech is not exactly realistic. I wish it was. You know, I wish that they would write their own speeches most of the time because it'd be more interesting. But, you know, they don't. So realistically, politically, that's just how it is. So, you know, let's grow up a little bit. There's so much immaturity in news media where we want to pick at people for stuff that really isn't particularly political, right? Like, I understand picking at people for their personality because that plays big into how you're going to be a president or a senator, congressman, mayor, whatever. But getting into someone in terms of their personality or their writing style or whatever, or their kids, it just doesn't make any sense to me politically. It just seems immature. I get that people in the liberal media don't like Trump, and I get that people in the conservative media don't like Obama or Hillary Clinton. It makes sense. But writing immature articles about them just doesn't help their cause, and it makes the other side say, well, look at the other side. Look how immature they are. And you can say that about both sides. So it seems unrealistic, and it seems unreasonable to write some of the articles I've seen. I think The Verge is especially guilty of that, not with politics, but with a lot of, well, somewhat politics, with a lot of online issues. The Verge is really bad about saying just editorial things in supposedly journalistic articles. It doesn't make any sense. I can give you a little bit of perspective on that just as someone who's written copy for journalism before, for radio every day. It's hard to be objective, but if you are, that puts you above a lot of other bloggers, a lot of other people, not because you are personally better than them. It's just that that's your style of writing and that's the type of media that you're in. And I guess it does put you above them in that sense, just on the tier of journalism. But if I write something that is factual and people on both sides of the political spectrum can see points in, I think I've succeeded. But if I write some attack article that really reads more like a blog post, what good am I doing other than just rallying my own side, which is already rallied? It doesn't make any sense, and it's really just immature, if you're asking me. And both sides are guilty of that. It's just something that I've observed in politics. Both sides are guilty of, and it just doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever. You see a lot of that online, though, like online so-called journalism, like BuzzFeed's terrible about that. BuzzFeed and Gawker are both some of the worst websites of all time when it comes to journalism. They're horrible, absolutely deplorable websites. And I would advise no one to ever visit them because they are actually kind of the worst. But anyway, we're totally diverging from Tech Talk. This is Binary here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. And you can also get us on the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone. That's TuneIn Radio on your smartphone, where you can listen to us streaming live anywhere in the world. That's Hot News Talk Radio on the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone. Now, riddle me this, Batman. Let's say you guess somebody's password just for kicks and giggles, right? Notice I said kicks. For kicks and giggles, you guess somebody's password. Do you think you should be punished for that, really? And if you log into somebody else's account and you don't really even do anything with it, do you think that you should be punished for it? I mean, technically, if you think about someone's online account like their house, yeah, that is theoretically sort of like breaking and entering. So I understand that. What kind of sentence should someone like that get, though? What kind of sentence should someone who does that get? Well, according to one judge, 46 months in prison, because the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team executive, Christopher Correa, has been sentenced on Monday to 46 months in prison. Back in 2013, he successfully guessed a password to access an online database for controversial data held by another baseball team, the Houston Astros. He pleaded guilty earlier this year to 5 counts under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act from the 1980s, an anti-hacking law. And really, it's outdated, but that's a whole another story for a whole other day. Judge Lynn N. Hughes from the U.S. District said, "You've made it harder for them to live their lives," during the court hearing, referred to the necessity of tighter security around all Major League Baseball. As the former director of baseball development, Correa was tasked with providing analytics to the team. However, when another Cardinals employee left to work for the Astros, he had to turn over his laptop and the password to his ground control, the Astros proprietary analytics system, to Correa. And using that, he guessed a variation of this employee's new account with the Astros, which enabled him to gain access to a vast trove of otherwise unavailable material. So essentially, he more or less cheated, according to the allegations, and he's been sentenced to, we can say it, he cheated by guessing a password. Now, that's a bad thing. Should he have done that? No. Should he be punished for that? Yes. But over a year in prison for doing that? That sounds kind of excessive, because it seems more like a spur-of-the-moment kind of mistake that you make. And even if it is malicious, you probably don't even think of it as being criminal. And I understand intent is not really relevant here, but 46 months in prison sounds a little bit excessive. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think? This is Binary here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. We're always here at hotnewstalkradio.com. Get us on the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone. Like us on Facebook, Hot News Talk Radio on Facebook.